The morning my sister called to tell me our father was dead, he was sitting 3 feet away from me, stealing bacon off my plate. 6:30 a.m. I put the call on speaker. Dad died last night, Simone said, cold as a bank statement. He left everything to me and my husband. You get nothing. Behind her, my brother-in-law Braden laughed. Finally, you're out. My father set down his coffee, leaned toward the phone, and said something I'm not going to repeat yet, because Simone didn't get to hear it that morning. You'll hear it exactly where she finally did. Here's what none of them knew. The funeral they were already counting money over was happening that Sunday. And Dad had picked out the flowers himself. Lilies. My mother hated lilies. He said she wouldn't mind missing this one. Welcome back. If this kind of story hits home, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. And hit subscribe. #1. Small Town Rich. 9 months earlier in October 2025, my biggest worry was a night shift schedule. I'm a registered nurse working travel contracts out of Columbus, Ohio. 13 weeks here, 13 weeks there. It's how a girl from Cedar Falls kills off her nursing school loans before turning 40. My father thought the whole arrangement was hilarious. You drive 3 states to give strangers their pills, and I can't get you to change my furnace filter. That was Moses Dawson. 73 that fall. Army, 1970 to 1974. Came home, turned wrenches for other people until 1981, then opened his own garage on Route 9 and ran it for 36 years. Sold it in 2017, retired at 65, and moved exactly nowhere. Same house on Maple Ridge Road he and Mom bought in 1984 and paid off in 2009. He wasn't rich. He was paid off rich. The kind of rich that doesn't show up in a man's shoes. It shows up later in a courthouse. Mom died in March 2023. Dad grieved the way he fixed engines. Quietly daily without asking anyone to watch. Every Saturday night he wound the little brass clock she kept on the mantel, because Carol always said a stopped clock made a house feel dead. Then, on a bright October afternoon, my 73-year-old father climbed a ladder to clean his own gutters, because asking for help was never going to be his best event. He fell 8 feet and landed wrong. A broken wrist. Plates and pins. 6 to 8 weeks of healing. Not a tragedy. An inconvenience with hardware. #2. The first honest paper. I flew in from Texas within 48 hours. When I walked into his hospital room, my sister was already there with flowers arranged as carefully as her tears. Her husband Braden was shaking the surgeon's hand like he was closing on a duplex. Braden sells mortgages. He has a voice like warm syrup and a handshake he's clearly practiced. You fly back to your patients, Amber, he told me, squeezing my shoulder. Family takes care of family. At the time it sounded like kindness. It took me months to hear what it actually was. A man assigning himself the keys. I asked to see Dad's discharge paperwork, his follow-up schedule, his medications. Braden smiled and said it was all handled, all filed, all at the house. Simone said, "We've got this, sweetie. You're so far away." Dad, doped and cheerful, gave me a thumbs up with his good hand. "Go on, kiddo. I'm surrounded by professionals." So I flew back to Texas. I want to be honest about that because it matters later. I didn't leave because I didn't care. I left because the 2 people standing closest to him kept telling me everything was handled, and one of them had already decided exactly how handled things were about to get. That November, Dad moved into Simone and Braden's place, 15 minutes from his own house. Just a few weeks, they said, until the cast comes off. And here's where the first paper appeared, the honest one. His right hand was in a cast. He couldn't sign checks. So Braden brought in a notary, and Dad signed a limited power of attorney, bill paying only, with his clumsy left hand. I want you to hear this clearly. That document was legal, reasonable, boring. Your own mother would have signed one. I would have. That's exactly what makes this kind of thing work. It never starts with a crime. Starts with a favor. #3. The wall. That week Simone posted a photo, Dad at her kitchen table, soup in front of him. Blessed to care for my daddy. Family is everything. 200 likes. Meanwhile, on a Sunday call, Braden referred to the paid-off house on Maple Ridge as the asset. Dropped as casually as weather. I noticed. You mean the house? He laughed. Realtor brain, sorry. Dad noticed things too, he told me much later. He noticed Braden brought the power of attorney papers to his bedside instead of the kitchen table. He noticed the pen was already uncapped, but his wrist ached, the pain pills made everything feel like tomorrow's problem, and the paper said what it said, bills only. He read it twice and signed. It was the last thing they ever showed him before asking for a signature. Then the wall went up, one polite brick at a time. My Sunday calls started landing on Simone instead of Dad. Asterisk, he's napping. He's tired, hun. Asterisk, for 3 weeks straight, I didn't hear my father's actual voice. His old flip phone broke. I bought him a smartphone, set it up myself, shipped it to Simone's house. The package went missing. I shipped a second one, tracked this time. Delivered, said the email. Oh, that, Simone said. Dad didn't want it. You know how he is with technology. My father rebuilt a carburetor the year he turned 70. He is not afraid of a telephone. I asked to talk to him directly. I offered a video call. I asked which doctor was following his wrist. Every time the same soft wall. Asterisk, he's resting. We've got it. Why are you being like this? Asterisk. Here's the thing nobody tells you about situations like ours. When a grown man is legally competent and his caregivers say he's fine, a daughter 2 states away has no lever to pull. There's no agency to call. Your sister keeps answering the phone. Simone ended one call with a line I've never forgotten. Asterisk, you chose your career, Amber. Let the people who stayed handle it. Asterisk. #4. Christmas in the corner. I flew home for Christmas anyway. At that dinner table, my father's chair had been moved to the corner. He just turned 74. The cast was off, but something else had been fitted onto him. A smallness. He sat in the corner of Simone's living room while she answered questions aimed at him. Asterisk, Dad, how's the wrist? It's healing great, isn't it, Daddy? Asterisk, he was thinner, quieter. His coffee was decaf, doctor's orders, though no doctor of his had ever said so. I got him alone for 10 minutes on the back porch, both of us pretending we needed air in 30-degree weather. He looked at me sideways, that old spark in his eye. My checkbook's been on a diet, kiddo. Statements used to come to the house, he explained. Now everything was paperless and the passwords lived with Braden. He'd asked to see the accounts twice. Both times Braden clapped him on the shoulder. That's what you got me for. I went inside and calmly asked Simone if we could all sit down after the holidays and go over Dad's finances together. Braden materialized like he'd been summoned. Family doesn't need lawyers, Amber. Unless you're accusing somebody. Noticed the move. I asked about statements. He introduced the word lawyers. Then Simone started crying right on schedule, about how nobody appreciates the one who stayed. And my father, because he's decent and decent men make soft hostages, patted my arm. I'm fine, kiddo. Don't start a war at Christmas. #5. The house that didn't smell like home. By February I'd had enough. I took 4 days off and flew home unannounced. Simone opened the door, startled, then recovered fast. Oh, you just missed him. Overnight fishing trip with the VFW boys. Fishing. In Ohio. In February. I drove to Dad's actual house on Maple Ridge and stood in the yard a while. Grass shaggy under frost, mailbox stuffed, curtains shut tight. A house holding its breath. At a gas station on the way out, I ran into Earl Prescott, Dad's oldest friend, who'd run the town funeral home for 4 decades. He looked at me strangely. Moses hasn't been to a post meeting in 3 months, honey. We figured he moved in with you. Not fishing. Not at meetings. Not anywhere anyone could place him. I called Simone from the parking lot. She didn't even pause. Oh, it's not the VFW crowd. Other buddies. You don't know them. A lie stacked neatly on a lie. 3 days later she texted a photo. Dad in an armchair, smiling thinly. Asterisk, Dad's doing great, stop checking up on us. Asterisk, I stared at that picture a long time. There was a small, ordinary detail in the background I wouldn't understand for another 5 months. When I finally did, it changed how I saw every photo she'd ever sent. #6. The call that changed everything. My contract ended the first week of May 2026. I came home to Columbus planning to drive to Cedar Falls and refused to leave without seeing my father. The phone rang before I'd even unpacked. June Hetler. A nurse I'd worked with years ago, sharp as a lancet, now worked at a long-term care facility called Crest Haven Manor, out near the Indiana line. Her voice was careful. Amber, there's a resident here, came in back in March. Asks every nurse on every shift if they know a nurse named Amber. Says she's his daughter. I couldn't speak. His name is Moses Dawson, honey. Is that your father? Nobody had ever said the words nursing home to me. Not once. As far as I knew, my father was eating pot roast 15 minutes from his own house. June said one more thing before I hung up, the thing that put me in the car. Asterisk Amber, he doesn't present like a placement. He presents like somebody misplaced him. Asterisk. I didn't call Simone. I didn't call Brayden. Some conversations happen by phone. Some happen in person in daylight with paperwork. I got in the car. Asterisk if you have an aging parent, ask them today kindly over coffee. Who holds your power of attorney? Have you seen your own bank statement this month? Not to accuse anyone, just to know. It's the one question I didn't ask in time, and it cost my father everything but his life. Asterisk. ##7. Crest Haven. 3 hours of highway spent being a nurse the whole way because being a daughter would have put me in a ditch. Inside, the smell hit first, cheap disinfectant over something older. A call light blinking with nobody moving toward it. One aid for a wing that needed 4. A medication cart still locked at 11 a.m. with the 9 o'clock meds marked pending. I don't say this to shame the aides. Understaffed people can't pour from an empty building. I say it because my father had been living in it for 10 weeks while my sister posted about family being everything. He was in a shared room, second bed by a window that didn't open. My father, who once carried an engine block across a shop floor out of pure stubbornness, was maybe 15 pounds lighter, gray stubble on his jaw, wearing a shirt I didn't recognize. But his eyes came up when the door opened, and they were still his eyes. Sharp. Whole. Present. Took you long enough, kiddo, he said. They told me you knew. Told me you signed off on it. They hadn't just hidden him from me. They'd hidden me from him. Telling each of us the other had agreed to everything. We spent an hour untangling 7 months of careful lying. His flip phone hadn't broken. Simone took it to protect him from scam calls. My smartphones never reached him. My letters, 4 of them, never made it past whoever collected the mail. Back in March, Brayden told him he needed to be out of the house for 2 weeks, while we fixed the guest room floor. 2 weeks came and went. When Dad pushed, the answers got shorter, until one day the answer was a hallway at Crest Haven and a roommate who yelled at the ceiling after dark. And through all of it, they told him I already knew, that I was too busy, that the nurse couldn't be bothered with her own father. I asked him the date, the month, the president. Had him count backward from 100 by 7s just to watch him roll his eyes at me. It's Tuesday. I'm in purgatory. And your quiz is easier than one of Brayden's mortgage pitches. Sharp as ever. There was nothing wrong with my father's mind, and that fact was about to matter enormously. He lowered his voice. Kiddo, whatever paper they used to put me in here, I never signed a second one. #8. The jailbreak. I walked to the front office with my RN license number ready. The administrator recited his script. Only the responsible party, Brayden Voss, holder of power of attorney, could authorize a transfer. I asked one question. Does Mr. Dawson have a diagnosis of cognitive impairment on file? Dementia, incapacity, anything? Silence while he clicked through the system. There wasn't one. Because none existed. My father had been admitted as a voluntary placement, on paperwork submitted by his POA, citing a vague need for support with daily living. A competent adult is not a package in storage. He can discharge himself. Full stop. I added politely that we could also call the long-term care ombudsman together and go through the intake file page by page. I had the afternoon. It's remarkable how quickly paperwork appears when you offer to read it alongside a state official. 20 minutes later, my father sat at that desk and signed his own discharge. Right-handed, healed, unhurried. First thing I've signed in 6 months, he said to the room. And it's a jailbreak. June hugged him at the door and slipped a sleeve of cookies into his jacket like contraband. On the drive home, Dad watched the fields go by and said quietly, "They think I'm filed away, kiddo. Let's not correct them just yet." Hashtag 9. 11 pages. I set Dad up in my apartment in Columbus. Real coffee, refilled prescriptions, the couch pulled out. Then we went to the bank together because Moses Dawson was still the account holder of record. And an account holder is entitled to his own statements. 11 pages. He read them the way he used to read a diagnostic report on a wrecked engine, slow, twice, no cursing. In 5 months, November through March, $187,000 had left his accounts. $46,000 labeled care expenses. For a man eating instant potatoes at Crest Haven. $89,000 wired to something called BV Capital LLC. You can guess whose initials those are. $52,000 toward a loan on a Florida condo Simone and Braden bought at the top of the market. Only $25,000 remained. Stapled behind the statements was something worse. A $150,000 home equity application on the Maple Ridge house, pending approval, signed by Moses Dawson on April 14th. On April 14th, my father was 170 miles away, asking nurses if anyone knew his daughter. Called Simone that night. One call, one chance. Tell me your side. I'm listening. What she said back told me everything about where her heart had gone. You were never really in this family, Amber. Don't you dare lecture the one who stayed. Hashtag 10. What the bank file was hiding. We stopped asking family for answers and hired Patricia Whitfield, an elder law attorney with reading glasses on a chain and a handshake like a filing cabinet closing. She listened to the whole story without moving, then said the line that made my father fall professionally in love. Asterisk, documents don't cry, Mr. Dawson. That's why I like them. Asterisk. She moved fast and completely legally. First, a notarized revocation of every power of attorney in existence, filed with the bank, the county recorder, every institution he'd ever touched. Second, a signature dispute letter to the Hellick lender, freezing the application in place. No money had moved yet, so the house was still clean. Third, a report to Adult Protective Services and a fraud affidavit with the bank. Then she laid out the problem. Civil recovery I can get you. Criminal intent is harder. He'll say Dad authorized everything verbally. They always do. And buried in the bank's file was the thing we didn't have before. A second power of attorney, full financial authority, notarized January 12th. The one Dad never signed. Patricia slid it across the desk. For criminal charges, it helps enormously if they use a forged document again, somewhere public, somewhere witnessed. Fraud in a drawer is a lawsuit. Fraud performed for an audience is a conviction. My father studied the page for a long, quiet minute, the loops of a signature that wasn't his laid over his own name. Then he looked up and asked me to bring him his Army discharge papers. Hashtag 11. 2 signatures 52 years apart. We drove to Cedar Falls on a Tuesday morning, while Braden was at his office selling someone a 30-year promise. My key still fit the back door. Inside, the air was stale in a way that felt like an insult. File drawers hung open, picked over. Mom's jewelry box sat empty on the guest's bed. On the mantel, her little brass clock stood dead at some long-gone afternoon. Nobody had wound it in 7 months. Dad stood in the middle of his own living room like a man visiting a museum of his own life. 7 months, he said. The house doesn't even smell like mine anymore. Then he knelt by the bed and pulled out his old Army foot locker, still locked. The one thing in that house Braden hadn't cracked, because to a man like Braden, an old soldier's box is just furniture. Inside, his discharge papers signed at 22. The original deed to the house. His medals wrapped in a handkerchief. And a letter in my mother's round hand, marked for Moses when I can't say it myself. He didn't open that one there. He carried the whole locker to the kitchen table, where every big decision in our family has ever been made, and laid the forged power of attorney down next to his discharge papers. 2 signatures 52 years apart. The 1974 signature. The M in Moses leaning hard left, like a man walking into wind, ink pressed deep. He signs like he means it. The January 2026 signature. Round, even, polite. Every letter behaving prettier than I ever wrote in my life, Dad said, tapping it. Even before the wrist. But the handwriting wasn't the knife. The date was. I'd already pulled his medical records. On January 12th, my father was at the orthopedic clinic from 9 to 11:30, Under light sedation, staff initials at every step. The notary stamp on that power of attorney claims it was executed at 10:15 that same morning, at an office 20 miles away. A man cannot be sedated in one town and signing in another. The paper didn't just lie. Told on itself. Something settled in Dad's face. Grief clocking out, a decision clocking in. Dead men don't sign papers, he said. Their notary friend stamped a ghost kiddo. So let's introduce them to a real one. ### 12. The plan. That night Simone texted. Dad will choose us. He always needs the ones who stay. You've got a career and an empty apartment. He'll figure out which daughter actually built a life around him. I read it to him because we'd agreed. No more secrets managed on his behalf. He looked at it, then out the window. She thinks staying close to a man is the same as standing by him. He handed back the phone. Call Earl. Tell him I need that favor he's owed me since 1976. At my kitchen table that night, over decaf he poured himself as a joke. He laid it out. They need me incapacitated or dead to finish this. Guardianship's their slow public play. Let's give them the other option. Better catering. He meant it. Let them believe he had died. Not a fake death certificate. Not a false report to any agency. Not an obituary. He'd thought about the lines and refused to cross them. No government paper, no insurance fraud, no cops lied to. Just one phone call, friend to family, and a memorial his buddies would throw him. Lying to liars isn't a felony, kiddo. I checked twice. The logic was pure Patricia. Even though she'd never touched the theatrics herself. Greed is a reflex. Tell Simone and Braden the man is gone, and they won't pause to grieve. They'll produce that forged will and claim the estate in front of everybody, because they can't afford probate questions later. Using a forged document out loud in public in front of witnesses has an ugly legal name. It comes with handcuffs. They wouldn't be trapped by us. They'd be trapped by their own paperwork, finally doing what it was always built to do. If this goes sideways, I said, you're the one they call crazy. He nodded like he'd already been there. I've been called worse by better. Then he smiled, and for a second he was 50 again. We just need a man the whole town believes. Lucky for us, I know the fella who buried half of it. Earl Prescott listened to the whole plan on his back porch, coffee going cold in his hand. 5 seconds of silence, a filibuster for Earl. I've buried 4 mayors and 1 man I truly didn't care for. This'll be my first rehearsal. #13. The call. Thursday, 7 p.m. Earl called from his porch, Dad and I listening on speaker 3 feet away. My father attending the announcement of his own death with his arms crossed, like a man auditing a repair estimate. Simone, honey, it's Earl Prescott. It's about your father. He collapsed this evening. He's gone. A pause. 3 full seconds. And into that pause my sister did not say where is he or was he in pain or oh God. Not Daddy. Her first words, breathed out over what I'll swear was relief, were, Where was he staying? Was anything with him? Papers. Dad's face didn't move. His hand did, knuckles whitening around the coffee cup just once, then easing. Some griefs a man absorbs standing up. Earl never broke stride. The Post brothers would handle everything. A memorial Sunday at the VFW hall. As for papers, well, he supposed some lawyer somewhere had whatever there was. Bait floated gentle as a fly on a stream. Simone thanked him in a voice already 3 rooms away doing math. She never asked to see her father. Never called the funeral home. Only asked about what he'd left behind, as if the man were packaging. 23 minutes after that call, phone records later showed, Braden dialed the Hellick lender's office and left a voicemail asking about disbursement timelines. Grief apparently runs on business hours. Which brings us back to Friday, 6:30 a.m. Bacon in the pan. My father across the table stealing it. The phone lighting up. Dad died last night, Simone said, flat, not a tear in it. He left everything to me and my husband. You get nothing. And Braden close to the phone wanting me to hear him. Finally, you're out. It took me a second to understand what that call actually was. She wasn't notifying me of a death. She was serving an eviction from the family, from the estate, from the story. The claim always comes first with them. My father set down his cup without a sound. He leaned toward the phone, close enough for the steam off his coffee to fog the screen, and said something. Quiet. Level. Final. You haven't heard it yet because Simone didn't. My thumb was resting on the mute button. Had been since I answered, because we'd agreed the trap needed 2 more days in the ground. What he said was for Sunday. She'd hear it standing up, in front of everyone. So will you? Into the live line I made my voice small. I need time. I'll come Sunday to the memorial. Simone's last instruction before hanging up. Fine. But don't you bring some lawyer to a funeral, Amber. Have some class. ## 14. Proof of life. They spent Saturday exactly like themselves. By 9 a.m. Simone had posted a black and white photo of Dad to Facebook. Asterisk, rest easy Daddy. Your girl was with you till the end. Asterisk 200 reactions by lunch. Till the end of what? His checking account. And that's when I finally understood the February photo, the one that came with stop checking up on us. Same armchair. Same wall. Same clock on that wall reading 7 minutes past 4. The exact same 7 minutes past 4 as in the new memorial photo. The same shirt on my father in both. Every proof of life photo she'd ever sent me came from one single afternoon. One staged sitting, cropped and rationed out for months like leftovers. He'd been gone from that house since March. Her photographs never knew it. While she posted, Braden worked. A neighbor called me confused. A van in Dad's driveway, a man drilling out the locks. Saturday. Before any funeral. Changing the locks on a dead man's house before they'd even buried him. ## 15. 60 folding chairs. Sunday, the VFW hall, flags at the front, 60 folding chairs on old wood floor. A closed casket, borrowed from the showroom, because nobody questions a closed casket at a memorial. A photo of Dad in uniform, 1972. Lilies everywhere. The whole town came. Dad and I watched from a storage room behind the stage, through a hinge gap in the side door, close enough to hear the chairs creak. My job was to stand in that dark with a folder of true things and keep my breathing even. I'll be honest, my hands were cold. His weren't. Simone entered like a widow from a photograph, black dress, new shoes, tissue at the ready, crying exactly when observed. Braden worked the room in his best suit, gripping shoulders, accepting condolences like deposits, a folder of his own tucked under one arm. They took the front row. At 2 o'clock, Earl stepped to the podium and said the sentence we'd built the whole trap around. Before we share memories of Moses, the family has asked to say a few words about his affairs. They'd requested it themselves that morning. Lamb's volunteering for the spit. Braden gripped both sides of the podium, bowed his head a beat for effect. Moses was family, and family honors a man's wishes. He opened a folder. Cream paper, blue backing. Moses had a will drawn up this past April. He leaves his home, his accounts, his truck, everything, to his daughter Simone and to me. Signed April 20th, 2026. The room made a sound. Not words. Would 60 chairs shifting at once as 60 spines straightened. Everyone in that hall had heard Moses Dawson brag about his nurse kid for 3 decades. And this arithmetic didn't add up to the man they knew. Braden should have stopped there. Braden has never once stopped there in his life. He raised a hand for quiet, found my face at the back of the room, and read the next line slowly, tasting it. And to my daughter Amber I leave nothing, for reasons she knows. He read a dead man's cruelty to a room full of that dead man's friends, and smiled while he did it. In the corner, Patricia's thumbs undid the clasps of her briefcase without hurry. At the podium, Earl leaned toward the microphone, gentle as church. April 20th, you said. Strange date for a signature. The side door clicked. ## 16. The resurrection. My father walked into his own memorial service. Dark suit pressed to a knife's edge. Shoes like black glass. VFW pin catching the light. He didn't hurry. Moses Dawson has never hurried for anyone. And he wasn't about to start at his own funeral. The room came apart in slow motion. A casserole dish slid off a table and shattered. Nobody turned to look. A churchwoman crossed herself twice and sat down hard. In the back, June lost the fight entirely and barked one clean laugh before clamping both hands over her mouth. Simone didn't scream. She stood up and simply stopped operating, white as the lilies, mascara sliding south. Braden froze at the podium, The forged will still raised in his right hand, in full view of 60 witnesses and 1 lawyer. Dad reached the podium, adjusted the microphone down with 2 fingers, the way he used to fine-tune a carburetor. He looked at the casket. Nice box, Earl. Little roomy for my taste. Then he turned to Braden and delivered it mild as morning. Dead men don't sign papers, son. And they surely don't drink coffee. Braden did what every cornered salesman does. Started selling loudly. This is a sick joke. He's not competent. Elder confusion. He wandered off from his facility. He's been manipulated by her. His finger found me at the back wall. She's after the money. This is exactly what the guardianship was for. The room did not murmur agreement. It went quiet the way an audience does when it stops being an audience and becomes a jury. Simone lunged the other way for sympathy, then spun on Earl. You lied to me. You called me and said. And there it was in her own voice in front of everyone. She'd been told her father was dead and never once asked to see him. Never called the funeral home. Never asked what happened. Just booked a podium and found a folder. I walked up the aisle and folded her against my chest, keeping my voice at waiting room level. You were told he collapsed. You called me at 6:30 the next morning about the will. You never asked to see him. Not once. ## 17. 11 minutes of paper. Patricia stood, buttoned her jacket, spoke for the first time. Mr. Voss, may I see that document? What happened next took 11 minutes, and I have never enjoyed paperwork more. She laid out documents one at a time, reading each like a weather report. Notarized revocation of all powers of attorney, filed in May, on record with the county and every relevant bank. Orthopedic clinic records. Mr. Dawson under light sedation from 9 to 11:30 on January 12th, staff initials at every step. A power of attorney allegedly notarized that same morning at 10:15, at an office 20 miles away. A man cannot be sedated in one town and signing in another. She looked up, pleasant. Bank records show $187,000 moved in 5 months, including $89,000 to BV Capital LLC. The B is for Braden. The V, I assume, does not stand for victim. Then the will itself, dated April 20th, when Mr. Dawson was residing at Crest Haven Manor, with 0 visitors logged that week. So tell the room, Mr. Voss, who witnessed this will? One of the 2 witness signatures belonged to a loan officer from Braden's own office, sitting in the 4th row, casserole on his knees, come to pay respects. He went the color of oatmeal. You told me it was routine estate stuff, Braden. A formality. A witness to the forgery unwitnessing himself live. That's when the hall doors opened and 2 sheriff's deputies stepped in. Exactly on the schedule Patricia had arranged with the fraud unit 3 days earlier. Mr. Voss, we'd like you to come answer some questions regarding a bank fraud report. You could watch every mask land on Braden's face in 10 seconds flat. Outrage. Charm. Then the last mask, the real one. He turned to my father, and his voice did something I'd never heard it do. Cracked. Moses. I'm family. I was going to pay it all back. It was an investment. I was growing it for you for your retirement. My father looked at him the way he used to look at an engine somebody had lied to him about. You had my checkbook for 7 months, son. The only thing you grew was my funeral. The hall didn't laugh. It exhaled. ## 18. What Simone said. Then Simone broke. And I'll tell this part straight because she's still my sister. She dropped into her chair like her strings had been cut, and for one moment, the performance stopped and the actual woman looked out. We were drowning, Daddy. Barely a voice at all. The condo, the cards, all of it. Braden said it was temporary. It was only ever supposed to be temporary. She believed that. Think she still does. That's the tragedy. It probably did start as a drip, the way all floods do. But nobody stays sympathetic on that side of the room for long. She proved why in her very next breath, wheeling on me. But you made it worse, Amber. If you just stayed out of it, nobody ever had to know. There it is. Not I'm sorry. Not what did we do. Just we'd have gotten away with it, if the family nurse hadn't checked the chart. I looked at my big sister, the one who taught me to ride a bike, who curled my hair for prom, who called me at 6:30 in the morning to tell me I was nothing, and gave her the calmest sentence in this whole story. You called before sunrise to tell me I get nothing, sis. I'm the only one leaving this room with everything I walked in with. ### 19. The parking lot. The deputies moved. Brayden went up the aisle between them, still explaining interest rates to men wearing badges. My father stepped to the microphone one last time, put his hand flat on the borrowed casket, and addressed his own funeral. Folks, I apologize for the dry run, but you needed to see it. Not because I'm special, because next time it's your house, your kids, your papers. Check them while you're still above ground. The pastor said, Amen. At a memorial for a living man. Still the proudest church moment of my father's life. In the parking lot, deputies settled Brayden into the back of a cruiser. Simone walked to the second car under her own power. No arrest, just questions, her new shoes catching in the gravel. At the door she stopped and turned. For the first time all day, she looked at our father instead of at what he owned. Dad walked over, unhurried as always. He stopped an arm's length away and, mild as ever, said the thing he'd saved 2 days to deliver in person. The thing his thumb had held 1 inch from the mute button, on a phone at my kitchen table, Friday morning at 6:31. You buried the wrong man, sweetheart. Simone's mouth opened. Whatever was supposed to come out never reported for duty. ##20. The ledger. Brayden was charged with 2 counts of forgery, theft from an elderly person, and falsifying a loan application. His mortgage license was suspended within the month, revoked by fall. BV Capital LLC was dissolved by the receiver. Between the bank's fraud restitution and the LLC clawback, my father recovered $141,000 of the $187,000 taken. The Helic died frozen. The house was never touched. Simone took a plea, 3 years probation, restitution on a schedule, 300 hours of community service, which the judge assigned at a nursing home. She empties bedpans on Saturdays now, and reads to residents whose families don't visit. People ask if I've forgiven my sister. 8 weeks later at the county probation office, she asked flatly through the glass, "Did you come to gloat?" I said no and meant it and slid across an envelope a copy of Mom's letter from the Foot Locker. At the bottom, Dad had added a line in pencil. * Your mother said don't go quiet. That part was for you too. Pay it back. Then start over. * What I told her through that glass was a boundary, not a bridge. When the restitution's paid and the counseling's real, you know my address. Until then, you get exactly what you offered me at 6:30 that morning. ##21. After. Dad's back at the VFW every Thursday. He and Earl started a monthly talk at the Post called Papers While You're Breathing. 2 old men, a folding table, free coffee, teaching people their age how to read a power of attorney, how to spot a signature that's too pretty, how to make sure the will in the drawer is actually theirs. 11 people came the first month. By the third, they needed extra chairs. I took a permanent staff position at a Columbus hospital. No more 13-week states. Every Sunday I make the 2-hour drive, and Dad burns the bacon on purpose because he claims I like it that way. The brass clock ticks on the mantel. And in his wallet, where the torn envelope with my number used to live, my father now keeps 1 pressed lily. Best funeral I never had, he says. My father taught me that the measure of a man isn't the number in his account. It's whether his say still stands while he's breathing, and whether the people who love him would rather guard his signature than inherit it. That's my story. 1 phone call at 6:30, 1 forged signature, and 1 old soldier who attended his own funeral standing up. If this reminded you to check your parents' paperwork or your own, do it this week while everybody's still above ground. If you've lived through family greed, tell me your story in the comments. Subscribe and share this with somebody who needs it.